first of all, they haven't had any opt-outs, unlike LSU, at least not to my knowledge, or nobody of impact, right? Have you seen the opt-outs at Bama? I have not.
No.
Looks like they might have 4 true freshmen make some kind of impact in DB Brian Branch, pass rushers Drew Sanders and Will Anderson, and then receiver Javon Baker, who looks faster than I remember him being in high school. Like did you think of him as a burner in high school? I didn't, but apparently there's some video of him just roasting guys. So I'm excited to see what they do. And my number one question for Alabama this year was secondary, aside from Pat Surtain. And yet I look up and down this schedule that Bama has. Which opposing passing offense really scares you if you're Nick Saban? Like, there's no LSU 2019 on this schedule. Like, are you scared of Auburn? I'm not scared of LSU's passing offense anymore. I mean, he pretty much owns Jimbo Fisher's offense and all opposing guys who used to work for him. If you're Bama, it may be the case, Barton, that your number one potential weakness does not actually get exposed in SEC play.
That's a good point. It's fun. I mean, it very quickly, the SEC just cycled back to absolutely no threats anywhere in terms of passing offenses. I hadn't really thought about that until you just said it, but like Georgia, we know what they're trying to be or what they're purporting to move towards, but there's nothing that tells us that they're, anywhere close to where they need to be on that front. LSU, we talked about. Texas A&M, sure, there's potential there, but that's still pretty plodding. Like, Jimbo Fisher isn't even really trying to just open it up. And Kellen Mond, we know how maddening he can be. Bo Nix, limited. Cal Trask in Florida, that's probably as potent as you're going to get. And still, that's just, I don't feel like anyone's waking up in cold sweats about Florida's picking you apart, throwing the ball. They have some playmakers, and Kyle Trask is very capable. Might be the best quarterback in the conference, but he's not a first rounder. Tennessee, ways to go. I mean, they got some young talent at receiver, but they're freshmen. South Carolina, no speed. Kentucky, Mississippi State, Mississippi State, obviously air raid, but year one in it, I don't think that's going to be of too much concern. Arkansas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Vanderbilt. You're right, man. It's it really is a conference that's, I would say, probably the least scary conference to play in from a pass threat in college football. And in that sense, when I look at the players in the secondary for Alabama, they look like good players to me. And so I still sort of expect that defensive backfield to be really good. I'm more interested, to me, in what happens with the edge rushers, because they lost Anthony Jennings, they lost Terrell Lewis, they've got Ben Davis coming back in addition to Chris Allen.
Right.
As their sort of starters, but those guys aren't necessarily high upside types. They're more just the veterans. So does Will Anderson, Drew Sanders, the true freshman 5-star, do they come in and provide a legitimate, scary pass rush threat? That's something that I'm really interested in. And more importantly, are those guys equipped mentally to sort of handle the workload in terms of scheme and everything else? But because I have no doubt about their ability. So I'm anxious to see what the defense looks like. But you're right, man. It's they're deeper than they've been up front defensively, and with Dylan Moses back at linebacker, they will be really stout, I think, in the front seven against the run, which is I think what you need to be in the SEC this year.
Dude, there's no doubt about it. And I think they will have the best offensive line in the SEC this year, maybe bar none. Two guys who I think we both liked coming out of high school, or certainly I did because I got to see him in South Florida. Josh Jobe at the other corner, opposite of Pat Surtain. And then I'm a Jordan Battle stan, dude. I think he's a really good player. He plays so much more fluidly than his size would suggest. You see him and you think, damn, that dude could grow into a backer someday. And yet he's out there, playing center field, making plays. I think my concerns for Bama are, the nickel spot, assuming Brian Branch plays the money role. in some of those passing downs. Like, what are their fifth and sixth defensive backs look like? Are they able to function? How is their depth there? I agree with you on the edge rusher concern. And pour one out for some of our preseason content, because I was going through it and deleting some stuff, which we never got to run because of all the COVID stuff. And one of the things I was going to have Marcelo write was, this is the first time in, I think, 20 years, or maybe it was USC Texas year, where you did not have an SEC team in the top 2 of the preseason odds, right? And a lot of that was because of quarterback, because it was going to be Clemson, Ohio State in some order, most likely. And now, obviously, they're not playing in the same season, so we won't really get to write that piece. And at the time, I was thinking largely it's because of QB, because Tua's gone, because Joe Burrow's gone, Jake Fromm's gone, even though he wasn't, that good, but he was still a good player at the college level. But man, now it might be as much about receiver. Honestly, like, that could be a potential weakness here for this conference. Georgia has Pickens, who I think we like. I like, Terrence Marshall. Bama has some dudes, obviously, with Waddle and Smith. I mean, it's going to be very interesting in this league to see who can step up. And at this point, like, all the stuff happening at LSU, it just makes me more confident that Bama can go and get out of here with 0 or 1 losses, personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about. I mean, I think you talked about sort of where do you place LSU in the conference pecking order now. Like, that all depends on sort of how you view A&M, how you view Auburn, because it's. I mean, is A&M ready to take a step forward and be a team that Alabama has to sweat? Auburn is that every year because they're just Auburn and it's Iron Bowl, and so I'm not going to rule that out this year either. But A&M, like, that's the big X factor. Like, I think A&M is going to be really good, but I also think that they hadn't really proven yet. Like, it's just an assumption that they'll be ready to kind of play on that sort of stage, and they haven't. There's no reason. There's no proof that they will be. And so that's, to me, is the big X factor in terms of, like, can Alabama run the table? Is 9-1 sort of the best you can hope for any SEC team this year? That to me just depends on whether we're counting A&M as a threat, because I think LSU has diminished as a threat. Georgia absolutely is a threat to me. What else is out there on this schedule? I suspect A&M is one, but that is much more projection than anything else.
At this point, if I was to ask you, would you take Bama or the field in the West? I know where I'm going.
I'm going Bama. Yeah. I mean, probably most years I would say Bama. I don't know if I would have said Bama last year before the season, but this year, I think. I mean, look, Alabama's like this. Like, we talk about, Ohio State and Clemson were the preseason favorites, but like, anyone that was dismissing the idea that Bama wasn't in a great position to win a national title with a full field this year is kidding themselves. Like, this might be as good a roster as we've seen from Bama. Like, it feels like we say that a lot, but like, this is. With the offensive lineman that came back, that's the loaded running back field. You still have 2 first-rounder potentially at wide receiver. Your defense will be better than it was probably the last 2 years, with the defensive line getting a little more depth and healthy, and with Dylan Moses coming back at linebacker. Like, I guess there's question marks, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is one of Alabama's better teams.
I actually agree with you there for sure on that. And I mean, the biggest threat to them is probably just COVID. To be honest, I mean, like, if they stay healthy and stay together, I'm not saying it's impossible for them to go 8-2, but I have to feel good about them getting at least a split of those A&M and Georgia games, both of which happen to be in Tuscaloosa. Now, granted, it's not a huge advantage this year because I don't think the Tide's home crowd is going to be anything special if they even have fans. I think they're supposed to have fans, right, this year, but not a full crowd.
Yeah.
You'll probably not enough to affect the snap count and stuff.
Yeah.